In this world there are many tales to be told, tales of villains and of heroes of old, tales of valor, of goodness and righteous fight, where champions refuse to go quietly into the night, but also tales of desires most vile, of a will existing only to twist and defile. But know this, my friend, inevitably tales end. An end they shall, for the goal of Narci and this deck by extension is to trigger the last chapter of multiple sagas and win the game. However, paying full mana for sagas is quite boring, so we aim to mass recur those permanents from the yard and with the help of some proliferation win the game in a spectacular fashion. But let us take things one at a time. Out of 55 sagas available in our colors, the deck plays 25, which are selected by their overall utility or high mana cost, for which Narci cares about. Some may seem underwhelming, but remember, any value that these sagas bring is just gravy. Binding of the Old Gods is solid removal and ramp combined into one. Restoration of Eiganjo and the Weather Sea Treaty can also ramp us, with restoration also being able to discard a reanimation target for other sagas with its second chapter. Birth of Meletis and Boseiju reaches skyward prevents us from missing land drops and smooth our curve. Elspeth's Nightmare is limited removal / hand hate, but has very useful graveyard house ability. Long Reach of Night also has a similar purpose. One Ring to rule them all and Phyrexian Scriptures are useful mass removal sagas that also provide our utility, such as self-mill or graveyard hate. In the intro you may have noticed that I also play Fall of the Throne, mostly as a lock mechanism, to prevent any comeback from our opponents once you have returned a huge number of sagas from the yard. While the Last Alliance is a useful tutor to get a legendary creature in hand, which can be then cheated into play with the World spell. Other sagas create tokens that are always useful, such as Battle of the Hellvolt, Fierce's Retribution that can make big angel tokens, Cherna's Torment and Oath of the Grave Host can drain opponents and create either a huge nightmare or 3 1/1 flying spirits. Jugan defends the temple, on the other hand creates a monk token that can be tapped for mana, thus ramping us. Timuret Calls the Dead and Binding of the Titans are useful for their self-mill. The binding can also be used to loop infinitely Shigeki Jukai's Visionary, for those times you really need to send a message. Because the build is graveyard focused, I went heavily into sagas that can recur a creature from the yard as a second sub-theme. Those are Ascent of the Worthy and Tales of Tenuvio, which can also provide minor utility. Elspeth Conquers Death and Eldest Reborn doubles removal. Cruelty of Gix that can also be played as a tutor, and War in Heaven, which helps us with the card draw and self-mill. And because you're probably wondering, what exactly am I reanimating? As a Phyrexia fanboy, I went with the original Praetors, Elesh Noah Grand Cenobite, to wipe or at least shrink opponents' boards. Shieldred the Whispering One, for removal and reanimation, and Vorinclex the Voice of Hunger, for ramp. He only ramps us and has no other abilities, I swear. Other reanimation targets are Runescarred Demon for extra tutoring, Woodfall Primus for removal, and Eternal Witness, which will be predominantly used to return a mass recursion spell from the yard. Since we are on the topic of the graveyard, other useful cards that fill it are Cemetery Tampering, which can also cheat a card into play, Out of the Tombs, which can really ramp up if left on the battlefield for a few turns, and Crawling Sensation, which can make chump blockers as a bonus. Shigeki Jukai's Visionary is mostly used for recursion, but can be played and used early game as a self-mill / ramp card. Now that the yacht is overflowing with sagas, it is time to look at the meat of today's meal, mass recursion. Brilliant Restoration and Triumphant Reckoning return all artifacts and enchantments from a yacht to the battlefield, while Open the Vaults also allows our opponents to do the same. Resurgent Belief can be cast preemptively with our sagas ticking away, while Second Sunrise and Broadback can be used for massive value once our sagas have already closed their third chapter this turn. Alternatively, they can be used as protection spell against mass removal. Last but not least is Eerie Ultimatum, probably the best mass recursion spell for our deck, as it also returns our large creatures and lands that have fallen as the Tron did. Sagas are fun, but waiting for them to get to the last chapter is like watching paint dry. Thanks to the proliferate mechanic, we can speed things up, and if Narci is on the battlefield, win the game outright. Since the goal is 2 or more proliferations, I focused on cards that enable this exact feat. Evolution Sage can go to chapter 3 with 2 land drops, one of which can come from hand, and the other from a few enchantment-based sources. Expand the Sphere for 3 and a green, where we can and actually must fail to find, thus proliferating twice. We can also pay 5 and 2 green for Plain White Celebration, which can proliferate up to 4 times. 6 life plus 5 to 8 mana, depending whether Staff of Completion is on the field or not. 4 black, or 2 and 6 black, for Yogmo Fran Physician, depending where he himself is on the field. And lastly, 4 to 10 mana for Contagion Engine. We also have Khan's Bastion, but with no ways to untap it, it is more of a value card. Some of the sagas I have already mentioned serve as remove and or ramp, but that is not the full packages. I would like to mention that the cards in the next 2 categories might seem a bit odd, but I chose them specifically because they are enchantments that can be recurred, and very importantly, have a self-sacrifice ability, which works with Narci to draw us cards. Those include Aura of Silence, Seal of Cleansing, and Seal of Primordium for single target, and Pernicious Deed for mass removal. The remove package is complemented by the Woodfall Primus, Glister Sunslayer, who also works great with our sagas, by allowing us to reread different chapters, and Massacre Worm, for the mini board wipe effect that also punishes go-white and aristocrat strategies. Martyr's Bond acts as deterrent to anyone touching our permanents, and is highly synergistic with sagas, as reading the 3rd chapter means the saga goes to the yard, meaning each opponent will have to sacrifice an enchantment. For ramp I chose the obligatory Soul Ring, as well as Font of Fertility, County Heart Expedition, and Omen of the Hunt for their synergy with Narci. Greater Tanuki is another enchantment-based ramp that can be recurred with relative ease. Before I discuss the mana base, I want to mention one last package, and that is the Pillar Fort, our Ghostly Prison and Sphere of Safety, to curb incremental damage that can pile up quickly, and to hinder an alpha strike. At first, Talia and the Gitrog monster might seem like an odd choice, but it serves multiple roles. It combines a Blind Obedience effect, Ramp spell by allowing us to play an additional land each turn, Amazing Blocker that can single-handedly deter attackers, and is of course a legendary creature that can be tutored or reanimated. The land base is nothing too special or spicy. 3 Shocklands, Godless Shrine, Overgrown Tomb and Temple Garden. 3 Slowlands, Deathcap Glade, Overgrown Farmland, and Shattered Sanctum. And 3 Checklands, Isolated Chapel, Sunpetal Grove, and Woodlet Cemetery. Command Tower and Khan's Bastion, as well as the basics, 13 forests, 6 plains, and 6 swamps, for a total of 36 land cards. At the end I'll do yet another small channel update. Now I know I said in my Yogg Mode deck tag that my next video will be the Flavor Rule Zero partner commanders, but drawing takes time, especially when you don't have experience or proper training. This Narci thumbnail, for example, took me solid 3 days to complete, especially the shading, as I have to be very careful due to working with pencils and all. Anyway, the flavor video is still on the table, its audio is recorded, so that pretty much leaves just the drawings. I hope you enjoy the things I do. Thank you for watching. Cheers.